Hi guys, welcome back. So let's talk about this idea of a Seven Nations tournament. South Africa maybe being included in the Six Nations. It's a bit of a hypothetical, but it's an interesting topic. So let's have a look at the reasons maybe for this and against this. And I'd love to know what you guys think as well. Now, reasons for, number one, is always money. It's gonna be money, it's gonna be revenue generation. The Six Nations countries have the biggest wealth in the rugby world, and the Six Nations itself generates the most money, and outside investors are really interested in buying a bit of the Six Nations, and if it's a Seven Nations with 3 times world champion South Africa, they're really going to want to invest. So the amount of money being chucked into this competition could be huge. You package up the TV rights along with, say, the women's, the under-20s, sell it all as one big job lot, and you're going to make an absolute fortune. So clearly the countries would get a cut of that, and that is very, very attractive. But is that the most important factor? Well, money does make the world go round in professional sport, so it's a big one and it can't be ignored. Now, other reasons why South Africa might want to join, well, sure, South Africa is thousands of miles away from Europe, as it is from the other Southern Hemisphere countries, but it's in a similar time zone. And, you know, you can acclimatise better, you can fly over, maybe play 3 home matches in a row, so you only really have to travel once. It could definitely work. And it's actually easier than the Rugby Championship as it is with the flying and travelling involved in that. So South Africa might be happy with that. Plus, a lot of their players play in Europe, so they would be not inconvenienced at all when they play away, and obviously less inconvenience when they play at home. So, you know, it works. It works better than the Rugby Championship, actually, which is something South Africa know very well. Plus, they've got 2 sides in the Pro 14 already. It does make some logical sense. And finally, are there any positives for the fans? Well, I guess so. They get more high-quality matches. You know, playing South Africa is a huge, huge event, a huge match, and if it's annual, then, you know, it's going to be exciting for the fans for sure. Let's look at some reasons against, and there are quite a few. I think number one, top of the agenda, is player welfare. So this is an extra game, and I don't think they'd extend the window. I think that's pretty much set, so it's going to be over 7 weekends, 1 rest weekend. And, you know, teams may well be playing 6 games all the way through, depending where their rest weekend is. You could say, okay, rotate the squad, bigger squads, but that's not going to happen because teams, if they want to win it, will have to play pretty much their strongest team for most of those 6 games. And I think the players' unions will be up in arms with the amount of brutal rugby, the highest level of rugby possible in a row. 6 games like that in a row, I don't think will be acceptable. And player welfare could be the thing that actually sinks this idea dead, straight away. And then obviously another thing to consider is the Rugby Championship teams, New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, they would lose out massively. You know, what happens to the Rugby Championship? Well, you'd have to rejig it. Do you go into time zones? Do you bring in Japan? What do you do with Argentina? It's a mess. But, you know, originally the idea was who's the best team in the Southern Hemisphere? And those teams, generally, certainly South Africa, Australia and New Zealand, were the best teams in the world anyway, and it would sort out who the best team in the world was outside of a World Cup. You could argue that's maybe not so much the case now, but, you know, still stands pretty strong. So it would lose its identity without South Africa. Plus, it's the biggest rivalry. South Africa, New Zealand is the biggest rivalry in the Southern Hemisphere, not New Zealand, Australia, and you'd lose that regularly. They'd probably play each other sometimes, but it, you know, really loses a lot of prestige, a lot of identity. And also, what about the Six Nations identity? It's meant to be a European competition, isn't it? Who's the best team in Europe, and kind of who's the best team in the Northern Hemisphere, although Japan are in the Northern Hemisphere, so they'd have an argument. But, you know, what does it become? The time zone championship? It's all a little bit, you know, wishy-washy. It's kind of there just because it suits time zones and money, etc., rather than actual identity. You know, and you lose that tradition. Or is tradition kind of an outdated concept anyway? Now, in the short term, I just can't see this getting off the ground unless the money is ridiculous, which it could be. But again, player welfare could scupper it, like the Nations Cup idea. It may well come and go, but what do you guys think? You know, especially South African fans, what do you think? Would you want to go for this? Anyway, guys, comments below, let me know what you think, and until next time, I'll see you then.